Okay, hi guys. So this is Chelsea for Chelsea Buns cross stitch this morning. So as you can see, I finally finished the fall bookmark, and this will be hopefully released on the store relatively soon. But because bookmarks need to be finished a specific way, I figured I would do a little how-to video so that you can finish your bookmark just like I did. So this is the finished piece. I think it's about 2.5 by 8 inches, which is standard bookmark size. You'll need a couple of things to do this project. One is fusible web. Something like this will work. You can also get the sew-on stuff. This is just the iron-on adhesive. This is just going to give it a little bit more stability so that when you use it, it doesn't flex as much. And it won't be as flimsy as just the Aida. This stitch is done on 14 count Aida in oatmeal. That'll be a part of the chart once I get it finished and published. The other thing you'll need is some fabric that goes with your pattern, because we're going to back it with fabric. Now there are a number of different ways to do this. You don't have to follow this process whatsoever. I have a few coordinating fabrics here, all that I kind of thought might look nice in some fall colors. I think I'm leaning towards the brown or the green. I don't think the gray is as nice, even though it's still really pretty and cute. So yeah, so I need to make a decision between the green and the brown. And I think for this one, I'm going to stick with the brown because I find the colors really complementary. So I'm going to pause this video, go do some cutting, take the bookmark out of the Q-snaps, and then I will show you the rest of the process. See you soon. So here we are, the fabric's out of the Q-snap. One thing I want to make sure that everybody knows is that in this case, I know there are some people that are picky about backs, but if having a clean back is the difference between you stitching and non-stitching, please don't let that stop you. My back looks terrible, but I think the front stitching looks lovely. So unless you're doing black work or something that specifically calls for you to have a beautiful back, don't worry about it and just stitch and enjoy your time. Yeah, so, okay, so out of the Q-snap, because we have to do some cutting. If you didn't catch it before, this is the fabric that we're going to use for our backing. So we'll have to cut a piece that is just a little bit bigger than all of the backing, or than all of the stitch pattern. And then I'm also going to cut some heat bond. And the heat bond you want just to cover the outside of the bookmark. So it needs to be pretty exact. So I'll be right back and I'll show you what that looks like when it's cut. So I just have a rough template right now. It's a little bit bigger than I need it to be. As you can see, I just have to clip the sides just a bit so that it fits exactly. It should finish right about here. But a couple things I want to note is that on the heat bond package, the most important thing is that the product you're using is acid-free. It can be quite scary to iron on stuffs to stitching, but by the end of this project, you'll see that it's really no big deal. So just make sure that it's acid-free. I'm going to go ahead and trim this up to be the exact size that we want it for the back of the bookmark, and then we'll get to some ironing. Okay, so now fusible web is finished, and I'll just show you exactly what it looks like. It should fit over the stitches basically exactly. As you can see, it's pretty close. Close enough is good. You just want to make sure that you're close enough to the outer stitches that when you sew around it, you're not sewing onto the heat and bond. That's the most important part. And now I'm just going to cut my backing fabric. And you can just rough cut it first. Sometimes that's easier. Well, all the time that's easier. So I'm just going to make sure I have enough so it looks like this segment will come out, and I'll be right back. So now we have our backing fabric cut to just the right size. It's a little bit, well, it's a little bit bigger, I guess, which is just the right size. You want it to be able to fully cover the back of the bookmark with it overlapping on both sides. And then what'll happen is once we start ironing this heat bond, it'll go like this. And then we'll iron this piece of fabric on top. So you have a sandwich of your Aida, your heat bond, and your fall fabric. Now at this stage, before you do anything else, you just want to make sure that if there's any little, I think I got them all now, but if there's any little ends that are kind of sticking up, just like this one and like this one, you just want to make sure that all your little ends are basically as tidy as possible. Some of them still aren't, but so just go through your project and try and take care of any of the kind of stragglers until you find it's clean enough. It's clean enough to put the heat bond on. Okay, so we have a fake little ironing board. I just use a towel on my table because it's easier and everything else is too big and clunky. If you're really worried about the heat and bond on your piece, which I don't blame you if that's the case, basically what I did here was just did a little test, and you won't be able to see it, I don't think. Oh, there you go. You see the shine? That's the actual heat and bond. And then when you place the fabric over top, it'll stick. But if you just want to prove to yourself that nothing's going to happen and that it's going to be fine, please feel free to do a little test area like this, and it'll probably make you feel 1,000 times better. So I'm just going to heat up the iron, and then we'll press the main piece onto the bookmark. Be right back. Okay, as you can see, I've started the process. This is just one iron down, and so it needs probably a few more seconds. You want to make sure that the heat and bond is really adhered to the surface, because if not, it's just a giant mess. The package says about 2 or 3 seconds, but I'm a little bit more cautious than that. So I'm going to let this cool down for a second, and then we'll see where we go from there. Okay, so this is all ironed on now. The front still looks completely okay. So again, I know that it's probably a little bit nerve-wracking, but the front's still totally okay. And you can already feel that it's a little bit stiffer than before, which is exactly what we want. So then the corners are always the hardest. So I have nails, but if you don't, just find a little tool to scrape up the side. And basically you want to pull this entire backing off of the adhesive, and you'll see that now the entire bookmark has that sheen to it like before. See? And then just want to let you notice I haven't cut the fabric yet because I am nervous, usually 90% of the time, and because it just gives you some safety net, you know. So now, right on top of the heat and bond, I'm going to figure out which way I want my fabric, and I think I want it this way because the fox is up. Make sure there's nothing in between the heat and bond other than this fabric, and you're just going to lay the fabric. You want to make sure you get it over all 4 sides, and then on the same heat temperature, you're going to iron the whole thing again. And this is going to activate the adhesive on the other side, just like a patch, like if you were making a patch with, like an iron-on patch with the sticky side down. So I'm just going to finish ironing this, and I'll be right back. So there we have it. So the back is now on, and just to prove it to yourself, if you want to pull up a little corner, you'll see it tugs right where the heat and bond starts. And then you want to let this cool. And when you flip it over, I'm not exactly sure if you can see it in the video, but because I use a dark fabric, I can see how much I have to work with. So there's plenty more on the sides. It's not just the bookmark right now. If you're not a sewer, there's a ton of ways to finish these bookmarks, and I think the next time I do a tutorial, I'll do one that's no sew. But this one, fall is kind of a special time for me, and I wanted it to be really beautiful. So this one, I'm going to use heat and bond, the fabric, and then I'm going to stitch the outside of it so that it's all finished in the same way. So I'm going to go get that set up with my sewing machine. I'm going to let this cool down a little bit so that it's a little bit more rigid, and then we can go from there. So again, like I said, there's tons of ways to finish this bookmark, but today I choose sewing because I wanted it to be finished really beautifully. This is a, depending on how you pronounce it, Gutermann or Gutterman thread in this beautiful, like, I don't know, it's a very fall color. This is what it looks like. So this is the stuff I'll be using today. I'm just going to get the sewing machine set up and go from there. So now all of you professional sewers will probably laugh at me, but every single time I start a sewing project, I have to check the tension because of all things that I get wrong in a sewing project, it's the tension on my machine. So we'll just see how this goes. I haven't used this machine in God knows how long. That's another reason why I wanted to do this type of finish. So yeah, we'll just see how this goes. A little back stitch, and this actually, to be honest with you, which never happens to me, it looks like this might just be perfect. So I guess my point is, do not start on your actual project until you're 100% convinced that the tension on your sewing machine is going to be good for the work. Because I can't tell you how many projects I've messed up because my tension isn't correct. And I'm not sure exactly if you can see that, but to me, that looks brilliant. So there's a first time for everything. Okay, I'm going to get my piece ready to go, and then I'll start taping again. Okay, so I have my piece set up. It has the fusible web on the inside. It has the beautiful fall fabric on the back side. I placed it in the top. For me, the top right corner is going to be easier to start in. I have it on a center stitch with a regular foot. It's not a quilting foot, it's the same on each side, so regular foot. So here we go. And it's just so important to take your time on a piece like this, because lines matter. So having a straight line on the outside of your stitch is so important. So I'm gonna go finish this up and I'll see you in a bit. So I'm just gonna film the last part here and going around the last couple of corners just so you guys can see. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm really trying to get out of my head that everything I do needs to be done to perfection. The whole point of this is to create something beautiful that either you can use for yourself or give to a good friend who loves to read, whatever. So just remember, done is better than perfect. So even if your sewing's not perfect, it doesn't matter. It's the thought behind something like this that really makes a difference. So don't let it stop you that, like, my lines aren't perfect on this whatsoever. And I'm going rather slow so I can do the best I can. But yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be perfect, and don't let that prevent you from doing a stitch like this or a finish like this. Because there's a lot of joy out of finishing something like this, especially for yourself. So now for the look that I want, I'm actually going to go around this whole piece a second time on basically the exact same line. The other thing is, when you're doing it, make sure your fabric's straight, because there have been so many times where I've done it and my fabric gets caught on itself on the back and then you have to rip it all out, so just be aware. So I'm going to go over this piece one more time with this same stitch, and then I'm going to decide on whether or not I'm going to do any more decorative stitching or whatnot. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I just finished and I have a nice basic regular stitch around the outside. It's not perfect, but I'm totally happy with it. Same with on the back. This is what it looks like, just a straight stitch, and it's a beautiful finish to the back of the bookmark. And now I'm kind of deciding on whether or not I want to do some decorative stitching around the outside. It's always a risk when you stitch over your own stitching with another decorative stitch. I'm not sure if any of you experienced that before, so I'm going to take a couple minutes to think about it, and then I'll probably come back with a solution. So I'll be right back. Okay, so as you can see on this side here, I tried some decorative stitch, some blanket stitch. And to be honest, none of it's really calling out to me, so sometimes it's better to keep it simple. So now all I'm going to do is trim off the edges of my bookmark, and I'll be right back to show you the finished piece. So in the last stage, you just want to make sure that you get basically as close to this stitching as you can without snipping the stitches. So all times Of all times that you want to take your time with this finishing process and this piece, it's right now. And just be super delicate and use a really great pair of fabric shears so you're as exact as you can get. And then once you're done that, you're finished. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. So just do your best. Cross stitch only means that you got to go the same way with all your directions, but even if you don't feel like it, that's cool too. And then I probably finish this in the simplest way possible with just a straight stitch and nothing fancy. I was going to do a blanket stitch, but you know, I'd rather not risk my stitching just to have one more decorative element. So this is the last side that I'm trimming. I did a preliminary trim to get all the excess fabric off. And now this is just like my final detail trim. And then once you're done, you'll have an insanely gorgeous fall bookmark that you can pull out every year during the fall season. And hopefully it will encourage some of you to take time out for yourselves and relax and either stitch or read a little bit more than usual when the weather starts to get cold. And there we have it. I'm just going to take this corner off. Oh, there we go. So that's it. Now you have a gorgeous bookmark with a beautiful backing, and it's not like it held its shape, like it's not too flimsy. That's why we put the fusible web on the inside, is so it has some substance to it. There you have it. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this finishing video and this stitch. It's the first design I've ever done. I hope you love it, and I hope it brings you some joy. Okay, bye guys.